Godzilla vs. MechaGodzilla 2 begins to bring the Heisei line of films together. What I mean is that they really start to make the shared timeline of these films come together in a satisfying way. The film opens with a group of scientists and government officials walking up to the retrieved remains of MechaGodzilla. This of course leads to their reverse engineering, which ends up with the creation of MechaGodzilla, and we get introduced to another Godzillasaurus, which was set up earlier as well. And Mickey receives a bigger role too. But what is even more interesting is that the way we see Godzilla is challenged, and we have to question what we as humans have done and how small we are compared to the world. This film revolves around the creation of MechaGodzilla and a group of scientists discovering a mysterious egg. The scientists find the egg on an island and are surprised to come across a giant pterodon. This pterodon, of course, is the introduction of Rodan to the Heisei films. It definitely looks better than what Rodan looked like in the Showa films, and I personally like the design of this one. Instead of using suitmation, this Rodan was brought to life using puppetry, and I think it works better for the character. Anyway, Rodan has always been characterized as being a weaker kaiju when put up against Godzilla. But Rodan has a fierce determination in this film. Rodan is trying their hardest to protect the egg, but at the same time Godzilla has decided to take on the responsibility for this egg, causing them to fight over it. During their fight, they are distracted while the humans take their egg. When the egg hatches, a baby Godzilla emerges. Using this baby Godzilla, scientists are able to determine a weak point on Godzilla, which the military wishes to exploit with MechaGodzilla. However, it may not be as easy as that. What I love about this film is that there are no antagonists. The drama comes from the fact that three different factions are trying to protect Godzilla Jr., Godzilla, Rodan, and the human characters, specifically Kazuma, Aoki, Mickey, and Azusa Gojo. Each of them have a different idea of how to handle this situation. The complexity, though, that derives from this is that the humans really are the bad guys. Obviously, the main cast has Junior's best interests in mind, but General Aso and G-Force are different. They want Junior only to exploit him in the fight against Godzilla. Now, I still do not necessarily think of General Aso as a villain. He genuinely wants to defeat Godzilla to keep his country safe. His motives are very understandable. It's just that at the end of the day, he wants to use a baby against Godzilla, while Godzilla just wants to take care of that kid. Take this in mind, humans are at fault for most of the destruction caused in this movie. It is on the humans for taking Junior from his island and keeping him in Kyoto. Godzilla would have stayed far away otherwise, but since Junior was in Kyoto, this is what leads to Godzilla's trample all the way inland to retrieve him. And this is how the movie changed our perception of Godzilla without really changing Godzilla. We haven't yet reached the point in this line of films where more bigger threats are introduced that inadvertently make Godzilla a savior, nor does Godzilla consciously become a savior like the Showa films. Instead, the actions of humanity are presented as a threat to Godzilla, instead of Godzilla being a threat to humanity. I mean, listen to the foreboding and overpowering theme given to MechaGodzilla at the start of this film. We are meant to find the concept as MechaGodzilla being a step too far in the battle against Godzilla. It is militarization at its worst. The weapon of MechaGodzilla is too powerful to be in the hands of humanity. A little side note here, but speaking of Akira Ifukube's themes, Akira Ifukube only had 3 days to compose the music for this movie, which is amazing because I cannot believe how the score for this movie can be so good when you only had 3 days to make the soundtrack. There are incorporations of old themes, but there are plenty of new themes which are outstanding. Not to mention there's a wide range from military marches to a beautifully haunting theme for Junior. Apparently he was fed up with the process of composing for these movies because of the short time schedule, and he would not return for the next Godzilla film. However, his time for composing with Godzilla was not yet over. Anyway, back to the movie. Godzilla becomes very sympathetic in this film because, of course, he is being a parent. How can one not relate to Godzilla's struggle in trying to protect a child? This is still the same Godzilla from the previous films, but we are getting a new side to him. It doesn't humanize Godzilla, but it does make him feel more real. He is a living thing, and living things are never constantly rage-filled. Instead, it shows how nature is cruel, but can be caring as well. That Godzilla himself and the world has multiple sides to them. Even though Godzilla is destructive, it isn't without purpose. You can see why humanity works so hard to stop him, but in the end, that endeavor is ultimately fruitless. Kazuma loves pterodactyls and other extinct flying reptiles. Kazuma, too, is a bit of a goofball. As such, he does find himself confronting failure a lot. He remains determined, and because of his goofiness, he is ultimately able to surpass many obstacles, because he comes at them in ways no one else would. But what sets him apart as well is how humble he is in the face of nature, which separates him from other characters in the G-Force, like General Aso. He has a childlike wonder with dinosaurs, which allows him to see Godzilla and Rodan in a proper light. He realizes that these two monsters, and nature itself, is much, much bigger than humanity. And by the way, can't I say I just really enjoy his genuine enthusiasm for dinosaurs? It just makes him such a lively character. He doesn't act at all like a typical soldier, he is more like a kid, and I love this movie for showing that it is good to always keep a childish bit of yourself with you, because that curiosity allows you to see the world in a different light and enjoy it. He does mature in the ways he needs to, like in his interactions with Azusa, but when it comes to pterodactyls, he never changes. I know Godzilla isn't known for romance, but I still think it is sweet he gives a ride to Azusa on his weird pterodactyl robot over Junior's pen. Anyway, a character like General Aso has a difficult time accepting defeat from Godzilla, whereas Kazuma understands that Godzilla will always be the final victor in the fight with humanity. The natural world will always defeat humanity in the end, and Kazuma is used to that. And maybe failure isn't such a bad thing. I know we always say that failure is the best teacher, but maybe we can think of it too that failure just isn't the end. That it doesn't define you nor stop you. Meanwhile, the other characters changed their perspectives. Miki has generally been working with the government to take down Godzilla. She has really changed her mind with this film. Seeing Junior used as a tool against Godzilla makes her find the whole operation very unethical. Yet she is forced to use her powers to kill Godzilla, and Godzilla does almost die. However, Rodan puts aside their differences and returning to the more spiritual side of Godzilla, gives their life force to Godzilla. Rodan realizes that for the best of Junior, they have to side with Godzilla. Godzilla receives this energy and absolutely annihilates MechaGodzilla. The crew survives, but the robot is no longer viable at all. I find this very interesting, since in all previous Heisei films, Godzilla loses in the end, never completely. He is always still out there, but he is always defeated in a way that stops him at least temporarily. Whereas in this movie, Godzilla undeniably defeats humanity, proving that when it comes down to it, nature is bigger than us and will win. This film has the most screen time for Godzilla out of any Godzilla movie, clocking in around 27 minutes, which makes sense. It is a turning point. Godzilla is no longer a villain, he becomes something more. This is honestly probably the sweetest Godzilla film out there, possibly. At the end, the human characters, especially Azusa, decide they must give Junior to Godzilla. Even though they have made such a strong personal connection to him, they know it will be for the best. Miki uses her powers to convince Junior to leave, which is sad but nice too, because she rejects her mission and decides to help Godzilla, which is a big character moment for her and shows quite the amount of change. In the end, everyone, including Rodan, came together for Junior, and isn't that what we all want, just to help our children? This movie posits that all living things can be connected in the way that we all work for the next generation. And even if that is just a product of evolution, it is still something special. Even if we know how it works, isn't it still magic? And even though this can cause conflict as we endanger Godzilla's kid to protect our own, which makes Godzilla endanger us because he wants to protect his kid, it still shows that in the end, this sentiment connects us. We aren't so different from Godzilla. One last thing before the general review. I find Godzilla's march through Kyoto interesting. He destroys a lot of the modern city, but the landmarks that have been there for hundreds, if not thousands of years are left intact. It makes for some interesting framing. Perhaps this is a critique of how modern society led to Godzilla, and the time before it does not heed the blame, and may actually be above it. I'll let you guys interpret it for yourself though. I'm just glad these landmarks were left alone. They are beautiful. Overall, this movie just has a really nice vibe to it. It actually takes the time to understand every side without just picking one and making it seem bad. As such, this film is actually kind of heartwarming and leaves you with a good feeling. We are ultimately smaller than nature, but we are part of it too. In the end, we just want a better world to live in, meaning humanity isn't exactly bad at its core. We are flawed because we come from nature, but it isn't hopeless for us yet. Maybe we can exist with the world. As we see through Azusa, our caring side will lead to more prosperity than our warring side. When she gives Junior back, instead of exploiting him, that ends the conflict and saves everyone, not just humanity or just Godzilla. Anyway, that's all I got for today's video, and as always, thanks for watching.